Hi, everyone. Welcome to this live transmission. I have a super special guest with me today, my dear Laura Einsenhower. We had the opportunity to re-encounter in this lifetime at the Full Disclosure Now conference about 2 years ago. And I just have to say that she's a remarkable being, not to say the way that she approaches to all this information, all the codes that she is holding, which are very important for this human evolution, and that she's kindly conveying, is a fascinating way. Again, always from a very humble and yet clear manner in which she's conveying and expressing all this information. She's a remarkable speaker. And well, before me saying anything else, I invite you to join us in this live transmission, and where we will be exploring the interstellar intelligence and DNA. You know how all this quantum architecture is embedded at a genetic level, and bringing in this unified field into a higher coherence when we know how to communicate through our multidimensional body to those higher dimensions, such as the stars themselves. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Well, so tell me, I know that it had been like 2025 was a very interesting year, to say the least. And very grateful for it as well, I must say. And yet now we were talking before going live about 2026, how we perceive it's going to be. So now connecting to all this disclosure movement that is taking place right now, what are your thoughts? What are your insights about what is coming up for us in 2026?
Well, we were just chatting a little bit before we got on here, and immediately, yeah, I feel hit the nail on the head with just how much humans are pulling back. They're not giving their power away as much anymore. I mean, this is a very significant time where Saturn and Neptune are conjunct each other in Aries, and Neptune is all about boundary dissolution, but then Saturn's all about boundaries and discernment and what we would call reality, but it's also the law of structure. So reality has been distorted, our sense of reality, because of programming, social engineering, indoctrination, false narratives, psyops, everything. I mean, the earth and humans, the elemental component of nature and how our energetic body relates to that, earth, air, fire, water, ether, has been greatly impacted for thousands and thousands of years. So I really feel that, Saturn and Neptune in Aries, which is solar plexus and ego identity, is working with the law of structure, but with the dissolution of boundaries, which connects us with the creative imagination. So we might allow the boundaries and the structure to anchor and ground dreams and visions. So the limitation would just be the timing of when it manifests. It might be the discernment that we need in order to know where to put it and what to be, cautious about, and where we need to sort of guard those energies so that they don't get siphoned and harvested anymore. Because very often we can hold a dream or vision, but all of a sudden we feel a hijacking or the loss of that, or we might be thrown into a survival energy, or find ourselves running a creative force, which is based in distortion, that we manifest for those that can't manifest in the way that we can, which would be the inverted parasitic system and all its players, right? So it literally has been stealing our creativity and our dreams and our visions, and throwing back at us something that causes a lot of concern about what the future holds. And I really feel this year ahead, people are going to be a lot more responsible, which is another Saturn energy, with the way their creative energy flows. And the outer planets, Uranus, which is electrical, and Pluto, which is magnetic. Uranus being, connected more to the plasma, and the Pluto being more the transformational magnetic energy that transpires from that interchange or integration. These three outer planets are all in harmony with Neptune, Saturn. So that really helps us to go through these initiations and growth periods, and knock out stuff that really doesn't serve us with a lot more grace and ease than before. We are also talking a little bit about, the attacks, the divide and conquer, all the things that are trying to yank us down. People are, I think, feeling a lot more levity, like it's not so heavy. We're only 1 month in, so we'll see. But I can at least say for myself that, yes, it might still be there, but the way I feel about it, my neutrality is a lot stronger. And I think that's really what these aspects hold as well. That we've had to look at the triggers. We've had to look at the wounds. Jupiter has been square to Chiron, amplifying Chiron. Chiron, the wounded healer, which has to do with trauma and wounds, has also had a square to Mars and Pluto. So a lot of ego wounds, a lot of warrior wounds, a lot of trauma has come to the surface for people. And I just feel that people are a lot more spiritually mature in the way that they handle it, the way that they transmute the energy, the way they disconnect from how it can really yank a person in. And I know I've gotten better with some of the attacks I went through. I was surprised at my reaction at times. I was like, I know better. And now I feel like a levity that, yes, is a part of the inner work, but the planetary bodies, right? The greater planetary intelligence that knows exactly how to heal the planetary system from invasion, archons, inversion, is very much what we're personally going through as well. So a lot of us feel things beyond our own soul journey as well. And sometimes that stuff can sneak in, and it can be easy to, people can easily take it too much to heart or too personally, when we have to look at it like, yeah, some people are just running the energy of archons and inversion that have been programmed to do so, or they have a lot of unresolved traumas that put them in their least favorable expression. Because I really do feel these times are either bringing the worst out in people or the best. And I just see the best is rising.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. I love everything that you said. I actually have been talking about this in my videos, that how I perceive it is that you can call it you mentioned first the planetary alignments, and those are super important. How I feel it is critical, like they are marking as at the beginning of a new stage of human evolution. Like, for instance, the last time that this alignment in between Saturn and Neptune, and also the sun and all those planets, was seen is in 1898, and the next one will be seen in 2000, and I believe 2076 or 67, around that, so in a bit. And when we are talking about all of these alignments and taking into consideration what you beautifully said about the presence of Neptune and Saturn within our holographic vessel, how it's signaling regardless. I can see that it's as a cosmic split where when we talk about unity consciousness, before reaching that singularity, which is that point in communion where all forces meet, we need to go through that holographic polarization, or through that polarization, which is mainly what we would say choosing sides. What side you want to be in, light, darkness, but overall it's love or fear. And as you were saying, I believe that it's through fear that they have been anchoring a lot of these limitations that have made more drastic or more harder for people to actually reach that ultimate state of love, and therefore unity consciousness. So I do believe, in terms of frequency, I can feel how the choice is becoming easier, because before a lot of people would say, oh, I really want to go into the light side, but there are, as you were saying, so many things trying to pull me back, and then doubting, this is too hard. Is it the way it is? Why, why, if I'm a good person, all of these things, like all those aspects of reality, because the frequency overall at a collective level, it was like trying to push away the tides that were coming through. And now the other way is that those tides are coming in the same side that we are, making easier that process, that vacuuming process, of, let's say, bring that reality that we have always envisioned, like life is not a struggle, that if you do good deeds, the universe will retribute you, because now we're becoming more coherent also as a collective, which is not anymore, okay, I'm doing my homework, and then as soon as I go out of my house, like a lot of things start happening and trying to pull me into them. It's not that they won't be happening. The thing is that they won't be dramatically affecting your reality, because the level of perception will be so strong and moving through such certainty that they won't move you, and it will seem way easier. And I feel this is very much related to the plasma coherence, as you mentioned. There are huge plasma upgrades coming up, and this is why, like this topic of how the interstellar neural network is influencing us directly through these planetary alignments, through the 3i Atlas, through other star systems. So how would you say that influences us?
Well, it influences us greatly. I mean, for some, Saturn is still going to act as a frequency fence or a lid on the creative imagination. People are still going to want to look outside of themselves. They might look at this sort of awakening time and partially awake, but still want to be dependent on something outside of themselves. It really depends on if a person is ready. So the energies are available for those that are ready in a much more clear way. I mean, before we had Saturn square Neptune, we've had all sorts of outer planet squares. Uranus was squaring Pluto for a while. And even when we had Saturn, Jupiter, Pluto all in conjunction, that was 2019. And we all know what happened that year. It was really a powerful opportunity for a massive transformation. And a lot of people kind of got hooked in the psyop or hooked in the fear. So it really depends on a person. Fear can be a great breakthrough. It can alert you to solution and downloads and guidance, or it can trigger dependency, panic, disempowerment, and all sorts of things. So we don't all handle triggers the same way, for lack of a better word, or, a sensation that might come up. Because as we know, somebody could have the same amount of resources. Some might hoard it, some might share it, some might find a balance between both. It really, comes down to the person. But what's happening is the body is really, really communicating strongly. The South Node is in Virgo. The South Node represents what we're reflecting upon, what the foundation is, the past, but not necessarily in linear, but like as reflection, in order to move into Pisces and integrate the Piscean energy, which is ruled by Neptune. So it's really about the body, mind, spirit integration. And as major shifts are taking place, all three outer planets moving into different signs, Uranus into Gemini, Pluto into Aquarius, which has already happened, Uranus dipping back retrograde right now, going back into Gemini, and Neptune into Aries, the dialogue is shifting and changing. So sometimes when people internalize a download, they get anxiety or a panic attack. They're not used to listening to that. They're used to feeling a sensation and fearing it and being like, make it go away. I don't like to be uncomfortable. Or that's an anxiety disorder. Very often, it's not really truly anxiety. It's a trauma loop connected to being shut up, shut down, repressed, suppressed. Pluto transformations can be very stunted. People might not want to be here anymore. They might feel like, I just can't do this. The going into the darkness is very, very scary. There's gatekeepers, or there's imposters that want to stunt that completion, because transformation is such a powerful thing. There might be, voices of authority that, stop the process or judge it or label it. And Uranus, or Neptune, being the creative imagination. We have a lot of choice in front of us as far as what we're going to allow to move through our creative channels to give birth to. So the electric, magnetic, and dissolution of boundaries of Neptune, three-eye atlas, and, like you said, this configuration that doesn't happen often. Last one being, quite some time ago in the 1800s, late 1800s. This is a real opportunity to, take charge. So the darkness, in the way that you're describing, is staying in the dark, not understanding the light, not planting seeds of light in the womb, in the darkness, in the soil. It's just being kept in the dark. It's being fearful. It's not completing the process. And our bodies require that process for circulation, for moving energy, for transmutation and alchemizing things, and also breaking down dark weaponry and dissolving its hold on us. But the strongest weapon is on the mind control. So we tend to look at these tools and toys and dark technologies and maybe fear them, but we have to understand that we collapse the control system. We collapse the dark technology when we override it by not falling prey to the psyops, the false flags, the social engineering programs, the divide and conquer. And as we keep collapsing it, it no longer has a hold anymore. And so it's so significant, because if Saturn becomes the container instead of the lid for the Neptune and the multidimensional and the creative imagination, this is really when the veil lifts. This is when we're ready for things like disclosure. But the problem with Neptune is it's very easy to externalize first and then decide what you think, versus creating from the inside out and, getting your physical vessel prepared to have discernment. People just jump too quick and they just go for this and go for that, and then don't realize that if the body is having a response that is uncomfortable, that it is either, an upgrade, your body's saying yes, or your body's saying no. But if we don't know, the difference between discernment and integration, then, we get pretty lost. And these are times where we just have to get real with ourselves, get real with our trauma, not be so afraid of it, not because we're going through a personal deprogramming, no matter how awake we think we are, but society's going through a massive deprogramming. Also the way it views things, like parents who still have their kids live at home. Oh, this is terrible. They should be doing this or that. No, they maybe shouldn't. Maybe they do need a lot of sleep. These are star seeds that, like we don't want to put them back in the container and back in all the stuff we woke up to. Like, let's be resourceful. The way we view what is necessary right now trips over a lot of judgments, projections, worries about what other people think and how it should look. And I think the most important thing in these times to be able to integrate the energy and have the discernment that we need is to allow the body to be the guide. What do we need? What foods do we need? What is too much? Where do our boundaries need to come in because we don't want to participate or we don't want to listen to something or, So I just think because of that South Node Virgo, which is the physiology, the way the mind talks to the body, we have to be very, very clear as we step into the Neptune Pisces, what is healthy and what isn't. And it's not just food. It's energy. It's people that we're around. It's situations we put ourselves in. And when the epigenetics receive the electrical energy and the magnetic energies, it is able to actually upgrade and dissolve the barriers and give the human vessel a chance to anchor heaven on earth. The configurations right now are literally divine embodiment and divine human. It's exactly what we all knew ascension was going to look like and be, but then what's taking so long? Well, we keep gauging our reality based on what's going on outside of us. If we can kind of create without gauging that on our progress or taking it too personally every time something tries to pull the carpet from underneath us, that's the pioneering energy that Aries is standing for right now, being a leader of the dreamscape, of the field of the creative imagination, to bring it through the solar plexus and be a divine embodiment of a manifesting human.
Yes, yes. Again, beautifully said. It's how I see it and agree. When I talk about the holographic polarization, it's not just about, for instance, rejecting those aspects of your shadow. No, it's actually acknowledging that the fact that this split, which is not separation, is just the capability to mirror one another, just as source does, and this is why it finds different infinite ways to recreate itself, to see itself, so it's being capable of acknowledging ourselves by the mirror that we are seeing. And even though, for instance, we choose truth, or love over other things, is not falling into any because even this is a process of consciousness, like the polarization, the dipoles, even the earth is going through that. In order, our neurons, in order to create memory, in order to create consciousness, it has to go through this polarization. And even as, again, the earth is showing to us, the magnetic poles reversal. So if we, instead of, isolating ourselves from that reality and excluding us from our choice, our sovereign choice, then we will be pulled by the wave tide, instead of us unifying with the natural cosmic process in which the earth is going through, which is that polarization. And then in order to find ourselves at that singularity, and mainly is going to the next stage of human evolution, is like each one occupying their place mainly. Okay, what's your place? Occupy your place, be coherent to yourself. And I think that, and then things will organically and harmonically start happening, because I believe and I feel that one of the highest traits that we have right now are all the plasma codes that are bringing coherence to our body. This is why it's making it easier for us to choose, easier for us to stay away or stay focused in what we want and choose to embody according to our divine soul mission. Because, for instance, we see the 3i atlas, how is it communicating with us? At a quantum level, it's through the plasma coherence. And the more that we focus in our water, you mentioned food, I agree, water, and everything is energy. The more that we are in storing or restoring the coherent bondings that link us to this reality, the more that coherence is going to start spreading as a network throughout this reality, and becoming that humanity that we choose to be, that we have again envisioned for so long. You were also talking about all these very interesting planetary alignments and the presence of all this solar system within. You also mentioned about the solar plexus. And I do believe that we are facing a critical stage in which we cannot isolate anymore ourselves from the cosmos, and how we are fractals to that solar system. So if we start acknowledging that Neptune is present within us, that Saturn is present within us, that Uranus, Pluto, Mars, Mercury, Venus, and so forth, then we will start to communicate with that other aspect, a higher octave of it, instead of connecting with the fourth dimensional version of Saturn, we can connect with the ninth dimensional form of consciousness
Exactly.
of Saturn.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
So well put. Yes. And yeah, I do presentations about like the inversions and the lower octaves of the planets that a lot of the, things that we see on the world stage through the news, through the entertainment industry, through the educational, medical, without the people that are operating within it, not all of them realize what they're doing, is keeping us in the lower vibration of it all. Saturn is authority, outer authority, what authority is telling you. But the highest octave of Saturn is self-mastery, being your own authority. And so it doesn't mean that those outer authorities don't have something to offer, but if they cut you off and it's all about what they say and not what you have to say, then this is a one-way street and doesn't make any sense. That's a form of mind control. Like if you don't have a creative voice, if you can't speak up when it's necessary, then it's all about the outer authority indoctrinating or trying to tell you what it is. So there just needs to be more of an exchange. So Saturn in its highest octave, more self-mastery, knowing to say no, speaking up, having boundaries, saying this feels right, this doesn't feel right. So every planet has its shadow. Neptune, self-undoing, addiction, feeling lost in an illusion, even haunted, right? Lower astral, entity attachments, losing a sense of reality, which is good because, Neptune can inform reality, inform physical matter, how to morph into a manifestation or a dream or a vision, right? But these lower octaves are very difficult. Like the 12th house, the house of Neptune rules prisons and hospitals, but it's also ashrams and sacred sites and plant medicine, right? So, choose your own adventure. Which vibrational level are you existing at? And are these planetary alignments helping you to know yourself more and get closer to yourself and your physical body and your consciousness and how it operates in that physical vessel? Or is it handed over to something else which you're at the mercy of? And that's why people are obsessed with the news, because they're still at the mercy of what is being told to them every day. Their mood is dependent on that. And of course, we don't hear enough good news. And then there's a lot of CGI, there's a lot of AI, and AI obviously, isn't terrible. It's just the weaponization of things, the weaponization of consciousness, the war on consciousness. We really are tasked to win within ourselves, which I say redundantly, but ultimately, it's how we move to these higher octaves and levels. Like you said, 9D Saturn, the highest octave of Neptune, and all these challenges that we might see in the planetary alignments. The squares really just put pressure on, but sometimes pressure people want to run from. So where's that quick fix? Where's somebody else able to solve that? And, we have to accept pain as growth, pain as purpose. A lot of people that are healers have turned their pain into purpose because they have found the key. They have found their wisdom. They have found themselves in the face of that pressure and the face of that discomfort or adversity. So we're in a system that leverages that, wants to make money off of it, wants to take advantage of it, wants to keep us in the lower octave. So it's very easy for a major planetary alignment to happen and people are just still caught in the web and still caught in the inversion. And I just, truly feel that the body frequency is ready. The consciousness and body relationship is ready to fully, anchor in, because the ramifications of moving in any other direction is that bifurcation. You realize this is getting more and more like heavy. This is getting more and more entangled, whereas this is getting more and more light. This is getting more and more liberated, but each requires to look at pain and discomfort. One choice might seem like the easy way out, but it's not. The other one might seem a little bit harder, but it's a reunion. It's coming home. It's actually being, fully accountable to the way you work with energy. And ultimately that leads to sovereignty and liberation. So like you were saying, it's like the light that is able to stand in the dark and know thyself and not be played around with by darker forces, because false light is just as dark, than, darkness that is unconscious or just empty and just filled with, forces that are, yanking on you, and where it's plugged into the system, where that vampiric siphoning energy will pull you in order to always remain dependent. And that's the thing. To me, it's like a divorce. And I know I say this a lot. if you cut the cords and you end an agreement with a relationship with something that is sustaining your self-worth, but now you recognize the red flags and it's all trickery and it's all deception, you're going to want to choose your self-worth. That's why we break up with relationships that aren't good for us anymore. We move through different changes in life, letting go of things and embracing the new. So that's what ascension is the willingness to cut the cords with something that we know isn't good for us, to stand strong in what we truly deserve, what our birthright is, which is true love with creation and that authentic relationship that communicates in a way that sustains our health and well-being in the long term.
Yes, like there were so many things coming through while listening to you. So, okay, presence for me right now is a huge stage of getting to the next octave of our connection with our own perception and presence. By means of this is the more that we misconceive the way that our multidimensional body functions, in other words, okay, yes, I'm right here right now, and I'm also spread in in an infinite field of probabilities, spatiotemporal constants, doing this, doing that, done, resolving this. Okay, so am I grounded? If I'm not grounded, that's where hijacking and all those things happen, because at some point spirituality sold us the idea, not spirituality itself, but specific, like trends of a spirit trying to enclose spirituality. So it was like, okay, so I want to escape this reality in a way that I am rejecting my humanity. Okay, so then that's how they would get you. Besides all the very fine confinement that they wove into a very precise harvesting control system, but with presence, when you are present, when you are truly embodying, and perceiving reality different. For instance, you were talking about pain. You are a mother. You're a mother. I am as well a mother. What about the labor? The labor pain. Like going through that process of bringing another life through your stargate, through your womb. You can actually reach high levels of oxytocin, which is having this arousal while you are having the most excruciating pain. You can be experiencing at the same time high levels of oxytocin, which is somehow close to the dopamine and so forth, because we have that power. How? Through our perception and focus. And this is a lot that was delivered through ancient civilizations. Focus. Perhaps some of those civilizations put it like way too evident, like the monks going to a hill out of greed. Yet us who are in the city or somehow close to a city and still living within that greed, it's important for us to develop those ways of focus, even if we are having all that energy of distortion trying to distract us. And for me, the main core that grounds us is the heart, which the heart vortex, which again is empowering the plasma body and being grateful for being here. Why? Because we have so many things to do. Like, for instance, as I was telling you, so much information coming through while I was listening to you. We're talking about Saturn. We're talking about, let's say the ninth dimensional form of consciousness of Saturn. Okay, so how is it embedded in my DNA? Where are the Saturn ninth dimension, the ninth dimensional version of Saturn present in my DNA? Okay, does it have a very specific frequency? How does it sound like? And then, start activating and communicating with that version of Saturn within us, like truly communicating, or with Jupiter or with Neptune, and like building up that relationship of those planets, those celestial bodies that are regardlessly empowering our body in ways that actually we can command. Why? Because it's our sovereign choice, and again, it has to do with that power of upgrading our non-local capabilities, multidimensionality, yet from a grounded aspect, which is not anymore losing ourselves into alternate realities, yet bringing those alternate realities right here, right now, to see how they can benefit me. Because if I am remembering them, it's because they are meant to serve my evolution in a way that only as I experience it, heart can bring me the key. And I wanted to ask you because what do you think about the true north? One of the big messages that I have received is the importance of restoring our heart to the true north. We know that there is an axis tilt in the earth and so in our heart, as at a cosmic macro level, micro level. So the fact that our heart has been misaligned, it's also bringing a different form of perception and not inequity in between our two poles. Not mentioning that for me, it's not only our feminine energy and our masculine energy, because that's the type of polarization that they taught us, which is just going back and forward, back and forward. You're good, you're really bad. You're really good, you're really bad. But it's more now about a continuum. Here is my feminine and here is my masculine. Here is my feminine and here is my masculine, like that toroidal field. So once we align our heart to the true north, as you know, in many ancient temples, they also took into consideration the true north. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's everything. That it's really what's healing, the planet, that we, when in alignment within our own heart energy, that really heals the fourth chakra heart, because there's the higher universal heart. And when it really comes into the physical heart, the green color of the, heart chakra, it actually turns blue lotus color. So the blue lotus is very sacred, as a plant, as a herb, as an elixir. So, yeah, I mean, the heart is the great integrator. It's the great alchemist, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, the Venus transits, the way the Venus transits have formed a perfect pentagram has, to me, been like the Sophionic corrections, realigning the planetary energies to source energy through the heart, through the Venus energy, reversing or correcting inversion, that's symbolic of the pentagram going into the ground, the ether, the quintessence, the fifth element. So I feel when we truly access the heart, and it's the universal love, not what feels in balance of giving so much, not receiving any in return, and just the battle we have within our own being of self-love versus how much we get, all that. That's a balancing act just in this physical plane. But when we really bring in, the heart energy of the unconditional love of the mother, and the return of the mother energy and its relationship, of course, with the father, and that integration of the masculine and feminine, our right and left brain, and the way these energies, work together, that I feel really clears out the toxicity, because union, you can't feed on union. You can feed on fragmentation. Archons, dark entities, feed on fragmentation. A fragmented humanity, dark agendas, negative alien agendas, deep state, cabal. Here's a fragmented humanity, and it's encouraged to stay that way. And see who the biggest victim is, or, this race over that race. And the root races, the 7 root races, 5 cloister races, not getting along in order to rebuild that 12-strand DNA. The heart is the great integrator. To me, it's the north node of ascension, of, being in heart, coherence, and receiving that unconditional love. Because when a wound comes up, Ophiuchus, the 13th sign, is ruled by the ether, and but also Chiron, the wounded healer. So for us to really experience that unconditional love, we need to bring our wounds out of hiding and allow them to be loved. And that's the most important thing, because we've been taught to judge it. We've been taught to hide it like it's not there, or medicate it, or run from it with drugs, alcohol, whatever, and not give it the love that it deserves. And I feel Goddess is intervening through us in the love we give to each other. Doesn't mean we don't have boundaries. Doesn't mean it's to create further imbalance in terms of those that aren't ready yet, and that can't be on that level of mutual respect and and unity consciousness. There's some people that might step into the temple and vandalize and make a big mess out of it. So, but it's that unconditional love that I feel those that are really on the path of ascension are holding for the rest of humanity. It's not hierarchy. It's not better than. It's arrived somewhere that is allowing the divine blueprint, our true inheritance, to blossom. And it's so much the heart, because it's a love story. It's the Christos Sophia. It's the Shiva Shakti. It's, and you being so well versed in the trips that you take and the embodiment that you hold, that you work with so beautifully. You generate that, you activate that in others. And what that does is it gives people more permission to be themselves. And it's not so much about the red pilling and information anymore. It's a transmission.
Exactly.
A divine embodied being, creates this energy field. And as we know, the heart is magnetic, and it is the most expansive part of who we are and how it stretches. And I feel that the toroidal field connected to the planet is representative of this. But we have to understand that the Anunnaki overlays and the duality, the patriarchy, and all of this is to wound the heart, is to damage the heart. There's heart disease, there's cancers, right? Cancer's the fourth house, it's the mother. All these, epidemics or health crises, and just the normalization of this as being part of the human condition can be greatly alchemized and healed and returned to center through the acknowledgement of the pre-fall conditions of the divine blueprint of the Christos Sophia and how that relates to the original architecture and planetary grids. So when we embody that, we literally collapse the inverted reversal grid network. And that is what ascension to me is all about. The Anunnaki, and I'm not saying any names or that it's all Anunnaki, but when we look at what's taken place and what's encouraged, people are internalizing trauma and a broken heart, the loss of the connection to true divine parents, and how that has been passed down to us is something to embrace within ourselves, to have that dialogue, to have that nurturing, to have that healing, to feel that safety and security. It has been completely taken away and replaced with these systems that leverage our amnesia and our vulnerabilities, of running unconscious wounds and traumas that are just labeled disease. So I feel dis-ease is the pathway home for a lot of people, if they can just understand the root of it and where it stems from, what's been passed down generation to generation. Look at the way your parents were and what was modeled. Look at your lineage. Look at what was attacked. Look at what's been targeted, and begin to be that override. And then if we all can do that, we'll have a lot more honest dialogues. We'll be a lot more loving and compassionate, instead of, allowing, these, dark agendas to cause more hurt people to do more harm. Because most of these crime shows and most of the criminal activity that we see is either a person not in possession of themselves that is operating on behalf of an agenda, voice to skull or some sort of altar, or it's a person that is so heavily traumatized that they just want to hurt other people out of revenge. So hopefully, and I see it already as you do as well, and the projects and the people we know that are out there and that we don't know that we'll meet one day, are popping up healing centers everywhere. The holistic approach is getting stronger and stronger. And the thing with Saturn, it's on a societal level. It's not just going to be some alternative thing. I see this becoming more and more mainstream, and that we're going to get closer, every day. And as we see things in the news that might make us worried about the chip or this and that, we're collapsing all of it. Doesn't mean it won't present itself. And that's what we were talking about in the beginning. The attacks might come, the false news might come, the trajectory of what looks like a new world order or another fake psyops might come. But is humanity ready to not engage with it to the point of being sustained and harvested, to bring life to that? That's all they require from us, is that we give life to what they present. Because when we give life to it, then we're consenting and we've asked for it, really.
Yes, exactly. It's like when you were talking about, I see ourselves coming physically together, like all these communities, like manifested physically, and us coming together again physically. That will strengthen the field, and the level of evolution that we are imprinting at every second will be so immense that, of course, this is imminent and untouchable. because we're creating such a coherent field, like a huge plasma sphere, that will redirect any other energy trying to come at us. And also at an individual level. This is why I was talking about the heart-centered. There are kids that they are now being born with their heart-centered, So that also, if we talk through the emotional body, what happens when we talk about love? Oh, love, like but love is also, like very straight, clear to, like straight to the point. That is when it's actually balanced and aligned harmonically, with both sides, what we could say our feminine and our masculine, our yes and our no, which is very much connected to the Saturn ninth form of consciousness that you were talking about. It's not all about yes, 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 which is what we have been consenting to unconsciously or consciously by this leverage that we had from our heart, because it was all about, okay, if I'm good, if I'm a good being, then I'm supposed to say yes to everyone and, like be very graceful. There is a different way of accomplishing it. And I do believe that that comes to bringing back it to the true north, which actually, even if we see what the true north is, I know that, without going into the galactic beings that inhabit right now very specific constellations, yet if we go before, like way before the wars, the galactic wars and so forth, I'm talking about a founder stage, we will see that, for instance, that true north and related to perhaps Thuban, in the constellation of Draco, they call it the guardian, the even at some point related to the all-seeing eye, so this is, for me, when we go beyond what is happening right now, as are you still there, Laura? Because I think your image, okay, your image froze. But anyway, the eye, even the way that we see it embedded in all these ancient alien artifacts that are popping up, like emerging into the surface, they have the eye everywhere. So for me, it's more than about a galactic group, it's about the cosmic order. Then things happened, as here, talking about also on behalf of the true nature of humankind, which for me is love, like it's a white canvas. You can write whatever you want on that white canvas. So if you see people that is acting in a very specific way, as you were mentioning, perhaps we can ask, what did that person experience? Because in the beginning, I believe that that person was primarily, coming from the space of the heart, made a choice, chose a side, and then here we are, But when we connect with the essence of everything, to that cosmic order, then we're capable to align to the true north. Also, you were mentioning about, the Anunnaki and so forth. The way that all this reality has unraveled, and again, through all these technologies like the 3i Atlas and the spectral spheres, like the Buga sphere, and the orbs that are now popping up into the surface, they are doing a huge calling to the collective, so that we tune into those dormant codes that are within us and that reconnect us to the true nature of our DNA. 12-stranded DNA, you mentioned Ophiuchus and the 13. I would love to know how you feel about this, because this is something that I have been chewing for a while, and is when we take into consideration the sidereal astrology, which brings Ophiuchus into the wheel, into the zodiac wheel, then we see that all zodiac signs, most of them, change, in a range of days, including what in this case is throughout the month of March. Instead of being Pisces and Aries, you have Pisces mainly. And then this is one of the messages that I have received. When we talk about Pisces and we see the eye, the fish everywhere, it's not only about Jesus or Yeshua, or it's about the beginning. The first ones will be the last ones, and the last ones will be the first ones. For me, it's talking about when the two fishes come together, which is having related areas as being as the first month of the year. Well, if we take into consideration, the zodiac wheel, and now acknowledging that it's Pisces. So Pisces was the last one, and Pisces will be the first one because it's throughout the month of March. You know, its presence, its alignment to the solar ecliptic. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I haven't really, I wouldn't really know what to say. I'm just like fascinated. Yes, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, absolutely. And when you think about, you know, Saturn and Neptune being in Aries, I mean, I just feel like it's lifting the veil between the ego self, which has been very compartmentalized in humans, and, you know, the creative, that, you know, when we look at dream time or lucid dreaming, you know, we are really going to start to lucid dream a lot more. We're influencing physical matter a lot more than we realize. We always have been. Problem is when we're in a program, we're just reinserting that system in our midst because we're interfacing with it. But yeah, no, it's not just about, you know, Yeshua. It's, and so you're talking about it being the first of the year.
Yes, you know, like even taking into consideration that, let's say, spring equinox is the beginning of the year according to, you know, like the natural movement of the earth.
Yeah.
And then if we go through the sidereal astrology, we will see that Pisces is present also in the month of March, you know, not just until the 20th, yet after the 20th. So then we'll see, wow. So then Pisces is the first zodiac sign in the wheel. Interesting. So is that how the fishes meet? Is that how the fishes
Yeah,
find?
I like that. I like that. That makes a ton of sense. Yeah, and I've talked to, you know, and a lot of people don't consider the first of the year, you know, January 1st. You know, it's April. So I mean, everything has been thrown off. So and to throw it off is to throw us off. And daylight saving, you know, just all of it. I mean, there is an artificial, obviously a very artificial component, you know, to the moon, but if we de-weaponize it within ourselves, don't we move to the higher octave of the moon, you know? So, but I like that about the symbolism of the fish, because that makes a lot of sense. And it is considered completion, and to have a new beginning, like birth, you know, from that is very much the way the creative imagination works. I mean, Neptune is very much connected to the multidimensional. When we think about birthing into Aries, into human form, at the same time, what's the origin point? You know, where is it coming from? I mean, the whole of creation is based in the imagination and how that became manifest. So anyway, yeah, it's fascinating. It's all fascinating.
Yes, and you were also talking about, you know, like the different weapons that have been used to anchor lower frequencies regarding to Saturn, for instance. Again, you know, like the cube. You know, we see the Kavas, a cube in the Mecca. We see the cube like everywhere. Um, One of the things that I do believe is that when the cube, like, that's the incubation state. That's when you are incubated in this reality and unaware of it. When
Mhm.
you actually release yourself from that incubation, the cube opens. And then instead of being a compressor, it starts to be the tesseract, which is that capability to travel consciously, multidimensionally, and even at some point physically.
Mm.
What's been like the one of the coolest experiences that you have had regarding to multidimensional skills within you?
My own multidimensional skills?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was never in my body for a really long time. I was an astral traveler. I was out of my body completely and totally, but I was still in charge of my physical vessel. Yeah, when we understand what we were doing when we were maybe traveling outside of our body, It's pretty remarkable. I mean, I had intuitive hits about it. I knew it was a mission. I knew it was a part of what I was here to do. And it was also, I just couldn't occupy the physical density. It was too much. It was just too much. The targeting, I think, also rattled my nervous system. But yeah, so when I got some clarity on it, they said, you actually, died. Your Kundalini kept you alive, and you did all this stuff in order to come back into the physical vessel. This is what you were doing while you were gone. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. I'm not going to repeat it because I'm not putting a fixed belief behind it. I could say, though, if I were to locate an ability that's been told to me again and again, is clearing inorganic entities from like wormholes and walking underworlds in order to collapse inversion and to go directly into the architecture of the mothers of darkness and the inversions connected to the dark mother reversal grid and walk through underworlds. And part of the multidimensional had to do with that. So, and I think we all do that, right? It's not just, check out my ability. We all do that to a certain degree when we're able to kind of strip ourselves of nothing, have something kind of taken from us in order to still find ourselves. We're not overly identifying with a label or something in the physical realm. We're finding more, strength and sovereignty within our own being. But at the same time, it works to, collapse, the system and the thrones of, mothers of darkness, the thrones that they hold. They hijack the 13th sign and the number 13. So yeah, I've had a very multidimensional mission, which is very, very hard to articulate. I explained a little bit in my book, but yeah, it's now I'm recovering from it.
I'm sorry to interrupt. What's the title of your book so that people can get it if they want?
It's called Awakening the Truth Frequency. And if we look at, just the path of Venus, the journey of Venus, I've always identified with that. Inanna and the Magdalene energy, going into underworlds, going into, these gateways, I think is something we all do to reclaim that divine blueprint, and that different archetypes we might, feel an affinity towards that are a part of the creation story that we're a part of. And so regardless of what I've been told or what people have said to me as far as feedback, I tend to not really repeat it because it sounds like what, but I do know that I've done a lot of energy work, and it has to do with also the earth grid. So there's a lot of grid workers. You're obviously like a very, very very skilled grid worker. And I think we all just covered different territory. We're born at a time where the planetary alignments, when we come in, are a part of the stage of healing that the planetary system is working under. And we come in and we work with the, patternings, the ancestral patterns, the traumas of our past lives, and just whatever. And I think the best gift that I have is having the curiosity and desire to really know myself, and what it is I'm doing to bring more awareness to it instead of being victimized by it, disoriented by it, or overwhelmed, I guess. So seeking that kind of clarity, I think, is important for all of us. We are all doing extraordinary things without realizing it. There are people that I work with all the time that I look at their chart and get to know them. I'm just like, wow, I help them to, gain more clarity. And I just really feel the minute we land, we're starting to do, that work. And the difference between an awakened soul and one that isn't awake is the unconscious consent versus being aware of where your energy is going. And so since I was little, I just made it, a point that if I'm, if I can feel this targeting on me, that I will not succumb to it. And so in order to escape the clutches of that targeting, it kind of involved losing myself and being reborn. It would keep them from being able to like have a hold on me. And I also feel, it's a part of the transformation journey in order to help clear a lot of distortion from the planetary system that has so much trauma in its nervous system. That part of going into the underworld is to collapse it, transmute it, weep, cry, find an outlet for rage. And when I understood, it wasn't just mine, it was for bigger picture reasons, then it started to make more sense, because I'm like, there's just no way I'm just carrying me, because I was always feeling into the bigger picture of it all. And people that, have outer planets connected to their personal planets tend to operate in that way. Even if people don't have them next to personal planets, they're still operating in that way. It just might take them a little bit more time to understand how their consciousness connects to it, and the things that are trying to distract a person away from it, because there is no hierarchy. There's different functions, there's different missions, there's different agreements, but it all is achieving the same goal, and every single mission counts. So yeah.
Yeah. It's like the moment that we fell for an idea that reality is sort of static because I'm sitting and I'm not aware of how all my molecules are moving at a cosmic rate and so forth, then we think that we see a pyramid. Okay, then let's do a pyramidal structure diagram, It's not that. The point is sucking itself into from above to the bottom and then creating a toroidal field. So when we leave the motion out of the equation, then we're not aware of how our dynamic truly functions, in order to be sustainable. This is why now a circular table makes more sense, or a rounded table. A rounded table makes more sense because then we say, oh, okay, so we are just in motion, bringing different components to the whole architecture, and then it works, without those lacks that were, of course, planted and then harvested through through the amnesia itself, because you don't remember your everything, But for me, the huge difference that allows us to see in connection to the cube, whether if you stay incubated or you become that Christ consciousness, that rainbow body, because even the rainbow body has the flower. If you take a scan on the rainbow body, the plasma body, it has the shape of a lotus flower spinning, So now if we fall for victimism, then the egg cracks, the eggshell cracks from the outside. If you empower yourself and own your choices and everything that you have experienced so far, and honoring yourself for everything, like that process of reconciling with yourself, like saying, okay, even if I don't understand what you have chosen, some of the things, I believe in you.
Yeah,
I believe
exactly.
you. Then you're capable to crack the eggshell from within, and that equals life.
Absolutely. And that just kind of reminds me of when I was going through it to, more extremes. I mean, it never really stops. It just changes, right? But when I was aware of it in my teenage years, in my childhood, in my later years, like you're talking about, like the incubation, that was like Saturn. That was the structure based in outer authority, based in having to sit in class, not resonating, not wanting to be there, seeking things that were calling me instead. Having, trust in that, and trust in the fact that people weren't going to get me, and that's okay. I don't need them to. I don't need to even be a public person to do my mission. That it's not required. I'll do it anyway. It's not, and that's part of the stripping of, identity, based in maybe what others might say or see, whether that's an identity projected on me or one that I own or claim. And I just never was able to really wear one fully and completely without feeling a limitation, or it just wouldn't hang. It just wouldn't stick. So that trust and faith in yourself, because the thing is, you will find like-minded people. And if you're not feeling that, or you feel incredibly isolated or incredibly different, you just, have to have patience and realize that you don't have to become what's around you in order to make it more comfortable. You can just stand your ground and be your sovereign self and define reality based in the way you perceive it and the way it's making you feel and how you respond, and not all this outside stuff. And that was one of the biggest things that got me through, is that I can't talk to anybody about this, and that's okay. And maybe, it made me feel a certain way, but I wasn't going to give it up for no one. And now I found my like-minded people, and we can talk about this kind of stuff. So. And I just always had this, kind of whisper in my ear, or just this knowingness that you will find, others that are doing similar work. And it's not to say that the people around me weren't doing similar work, but some are so cut off from it and so immersed in the system, in the punishment and reward system, and just trying to be rewarded and not punished, that they might not actually notice what their energy body is doing. And that, to me, is what awakening is more awareness of how much we impact our environment, and how much, the more aware we are of our soul longing and the greater depths that we hold, the more we stand strong in that. The rest, begins to fall away. And it just amps up our creative energy, because, our words are powerful. Our intent is as well. Our energy signature is still going to be there. But if our choices aren't in alignment, and there's a contradiction, and there is, you're living a double life that isn't in harmony, with your greater integrity, just for the sake of a paycheck, that's what humanity is definitely looking at. And not to misunderstand these gifted children and just medicate them or label them. And so I think I was the generation where, and there are many generations, probably even worse today, where the necessity for more understanding of that is critical for the health and well-being of those children that are growing into adults. Because the kind of problems that can stem from internalization of your gifts and abilities, is detrimental to health and society and our progression.
Yes. You were talking about the nervous system, and tuning into it as an interstellar network, just at a mesoscale, at a biological scale. I think that big part of why the nervous system collapses easily, even though it shouldn't, is because the frequency that they have been imprinting to the holographic body, like 440 hertz, it is triggering the survival mode. So you are expanding yourself, rendering yourself in this reality, and trying to do your best, and all these frequencies keep coming. So the more that you connect actually to other type of frequencies, and again with the stars that you feel connected with, that you have those visions, or they take you, like on a spaceship, and they are supporting your path, you can actually command and ask them to continuously nourish your plasma field, your neural system, with the very same coherence that the stars have, even if here there is a decoherence in the time system. You can just, go beyond the time dilation and bring this huge field of coherence and say, okay, here I am. And, I'm bringing all that plasma into coherence, to your neural system. Because, for instance, these kids, that you were also talking about, I agree. And that's the perfect example of how these two factions are trying to, well, one to promote itself to kids, and the other wants to support their own path and wisdom. You have all these kids that are falling for all these labels, trying to find their way in to this matrix, to be part of it, signing contracts without reading, the small letters, and then regretting for it. And then you have these kids that it's so easy for them to see the truth, and they just need, like, okay, I'm here. It's not about even teaching them. It's just holding the space for them through coherence.
I know. And it's just so simple. It's like you come in and you just figure out what your passions are, what you're inspired by, what you feel drawn to. Boom. And imagine if, and as much as I'm an astrologer, it's not like my whole world, right? A person that's embodied, that is coherent, that's authentic, is living, the patternings and is in the higher octaves, or in that 0 point, alignment and north node integration. And anyway, so the beingness of it all, just allowing that child to just develop in accordance to, who it truly is everything. If you have a heavy Neptune influence, lots of Piscean energy, lots of water signs, you're not going to do so well with the logical or the, so understanding this child will help them be exactly where they need to be. And when you think of the teachers and the people, this is all about limitation. This is all about the incubation that doesn't allow the butterfly to emerge. It's literally forming kind of a cage around it and trying to, guide it and push it to perform. And if you don't, you fail. And that psychological damage is huge. So I pulled my kids out of school. I see more parents doing that. I'm like, I pulled myself out of school. My mom wasn't too happy about it, but I'm like, you know what? This is not where it's at. I will not be measured. I know why I'm here. I'm going to go enjoy that, even if it means it's a bumpier road. And for others, yeah, maybe that's perfect for them. They like that, but where is it leading a person to the next psyop or trap where they're asking you to promote and push an agenda on youth, on patients, on clients? And where are you thinking so much in terms of that input versus your own intuition and clarity? And where is that take a person at the end of the day? And that's where I feel the bifurcation is really happening, because yes, that system is dying. There's going to be a lot of casualties because they're in a sinking ship along with it. But so many are rerouting, and it's never too late. I feel like the power of our consciousness, our higher mind, our hearts, all the planetary alignments that are happening, when we stand in alignment with that, because we're standing in alignment with our internal authenticity and finding balance in our life, there's no bioweapon and dark technology that we can't dismantle and override and dissolve. And that's the thing with like the rings of Saturn too. Even astronomers have noticed that the rings are dissolving. The whole Saturn moon matrix thing is shifting and changing. So Saturn used to be a sun. And now, it's divine authority. And we're going to be building systems and a new society based in the principles of cosmic and natural law and divine embodiment, not indoctrinated Saturn products of an inverted system that Saturn becomes the enslaver. So
yes. Yeah, I talked about this because it was on the 23rd of March that it was like the marker where the rings of Saturn started to disappeared for 3 days completely. And astrophysics, in astrophysics, was explained that it was due to the way from where we were perceiving, Saturn, through the telescope. It would make an effect that the rings disappeared. However, this has progressively been happening, and I was told that before the 23rd, like a few months before that, that this would be happening because the rings representing those, let's say, time loops that will be restoring, or let's say, yes, as information transitioning into a more evolved state, of their own evolution, of their own potential. So, before going there, perhaps we can do another show on that, because otherwise I don't want to keep you long, but it's very interesting, this aspect about Saturn and the rings. For me, other message that I received, like purely from the ninth consciousness of this planet, was that, it's like, it's important that you guys restore the connection that you have with me, because I'm not the bad guy. It's like like if someone else in the street, if you connect with someone that it's on its 3D form of consciousness, it will be very different if you connect with his angelic version. It's like very different. Is it a bad person? No, it's just experiencing the full spectrum of light, as we all are. So it's just depending what reality we choose to create. And now, safety. I believe that word is huge. Like every time that you don't feel safe, you shut down. Every time, because again, regarding to the kids and so forth, or even adult, like grown ups, it's like every time that you feel attacked, you shut down. So how can we bring that safety? And this is a message that I continuously say. I think I will be even writing it in a book, but it's a beautiful message that I received from the Bifid warriors in a place in Mexico, the window to heaven, on the way to the window to heaven. And they have like the serpent warriors, you know, they have the Bifid tongue. And I was like walking by, and then I felt their presence, and I was like, ooh, okay, I'll introduce myself. Hi, guys. You know, like all the protocol. And then they told me the strength of a warrior resides in the temperance of its heart. In that moment, I remembered, you know, it's not about the feisty warrior all the time. It's about knowing that whether you can be a visceral warrior and then being controlled, or you can be, let's say, a sovereign warrior that even though they take the same actions because that's what's meant to at that moment, you are not moved and dictated by your own actions. You know, that's a remarkable difference in how you're going to integrate your experiences. You know, how are you going to look at yourself throughout your experiences? Because then again, you know that the point of origin for all those choices was always the heart, you know. And the bigger, the more coherent that you're with your heart, the more that you become, the stronger that you become. And seriously, sometimes we are getting so good at it that perhaps things happen, and then how many people saying, oh yeah, you know, like they told me, you know, yeah, be love and be this and look, you know. But then again, it's like, what's love? What's the heart vortex? And it's that balance, that equidistant harmony in between everything that you are: acceptance, bliss, receptivity, emission. You know, it's mainly, just to summarize it for me, I would love, well, you have already mentioned something about it, but for me, that where we are heading to is acknowledging that everything that we need resides within. The simpler that we acknowledge and embody it, the lesser that they can touch us. Because when we are bringing coherence into our reality and our field, again, things might happen, but yet the perception in which we will be embracing them will make it a continuous, joyful ride, and not a fearful one, you know?
Totally. Yep. Yeah. I mean, the fear is just, I mean, that's Neptune is existent. All these planetary energies exist. They're connected to our organs. If we look at every sign has an elemental connected to it. The nucleic acids of our DNA are elemental: earth, air, fire, water, ether. So Jupiter, ruler of Sagittarius, fire, you know, can, you know, be very passionate or fiery or angry. You know, every emotion or reaction has an impact on our body. When anger is aligned with something, sometimes the anger is because of love. When anger is just to be angry because you just don't like somebody, that's a lower energy, right? If it's the fire of your heart energy that, you know, feels injustice, feels for the children, you know, cares about animals, wants to see the world shift for the better. You know, anger can be aroused when you see injustice. But if you're just angry because you hate people, it's a very toxic energy. The body responds. The body gets sick. The body does not like lower energies. You know, depression that doesn't have a solution or doesn't have self-awareness can get really murky. The water element gets very, you know, toxic in the body. Because you're spinning in the belief system about yourself and about life. You're not answering to your soul longing and following the input it's giving you from your intuition. Not to say that people don't try or might not have, you know, they might have chemistry imbalance or something going on there. But it's just amazing, how all that works and how impactful it is. But let me go back to what you first asked. Can you say that again?
Well, now that you another question came through, because we were talking about safety, and like even when you are, there can be a huge war around you. I've been there, like when all the pandemic thing and so forth, and the place where I was at, touchless, like untouched.
Yeah.
So that happens when you, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Sorry, I kind of went off on a tangent there. So many times I've been in really unsafe places. I know all of us have, right?
Yeah.
I was one time stuck on the streets of in a downtown city, and surrounded by drugs and people in tents. Somebody had stolen my phone and my credit card, and I was stuck.
Right.
And it was really, really quite scary. And so I was kind of wandering around the area. I had no idea where I was heading, what I was going to do. And I befriended, this woman who was pregnant. She was living in a tent on the streets, and her boyfriend was coming and going, bringing food and like purchasing stuff and like trying to take care of everybody. And I was stuck. And this happened a lot when I lived down the road. My perspective, my perception, if I went into fear mode, I could just see the energy get really like coming at me in a really negative way. When I held fear, it's, and animals pick up on this. All of a sudden, I felt like I'm easy prey for whatever.
Yes.
And my survival energy was overwhelming me, and I couldn't think clearly. And I just kind of meditated, and I found my center. And I just decided, to do tarot readings for people. And like, I hung out with the women. I hung out with this pregnant woman, and we spent like 2 days together. And I was stuck. My husband had to call search party. Nobody knew where I was. I couldn't call anyone. And finally, day 2, her and I had become friends, and I was hanging out with her children. She said, "Well, I have to tell you something. It was my husband that stole your credit card and phone," and they gave it back to me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I just realized, I was in the now. I was in my love. I was loving the situation. I'm like, I don't need to judge this or define this, and I certainly am not judging anybody around me. In fact, my heart bleeds for them. And I'm like, and I'm here for a reason. So I'm just gonna. And and then a person gave me a ride. I was able to get a plane ticket, and then I gave him my credit card and let him withdraw a couple $100s. And I said, "Thank you very much." And they gave me a hug. Yeah. I'm like, well, if you're going to give me my credit card back, I'll leave, a nice, whatever I had in there. And I'll just never forget it. And so many times in my life, just being, I don't know, like, especially a young teenager, like going to rock shows or just like taking buses and trains places, by myself and being somewhat vulnerable. And I'm not suggesting anybody do this but my perspective had everything to do with my protection and the way that energy played out. Yeah. Not to say that I haven't manifested all sorts of like unfortunate things, or that, you can feel safe when you're in danger and it'll just go away. But at least it made a monumental amount of difference to what I was interacting with and the way energy flowed. And when I was, in the wilderness expedition leadership, which is my background, it was everything about how one experienced nature. The difference between a survival energy and reacting to danger was always getting worse and worse and worse, and nobody could think clearly in the vibration of I'm right, you're wrong, survival, me, nobody else. You could see the way people were manifesting their experience from that vibration, versus just the calm, the centeredness, the knowing what to do, the trusting yourself, the animals, and the synchronicities that happen with the wildlife, and even rattlesnakes and scorpions. No problem, you guys are my friends. Was a very different experience. A lot of people that ran fear had to leave. They were evacuated. And those that held love and trust had their instincts, had their intuition, had their higher self connection intact. And the thing is, every single person has that. It's simply knowing it, taking the time, taking a breath, making sure everything's, kind of working in that arena. And I found, like, even later in life, even though I have those past experiences, some of the attacks have been so bad that I get so ungrounded, and like my physiology, my nervous system, and like literally I'm like, I just know to shut it down, take a breath, and just work with it from that perspective, because the cost of it not only will hurt your heart, it'll damage a lot in your physical body, and because the body rejects it, it knows it's not your truth. It knows that fear is not truth. It knows that lack of love, all the things that cause our physical body unwellness, is a chance to correct it and give it the exact energy it requires to thrive, which is truth, which is love, which is, finding the wisdom in the adversity, forgiveness of yourself, because we're not going to always get it right. And yeah, it's amazing what the physical body reveals, because literally all it wants to thrive is us to show up the best of ourselves. And then our organs start to respond. That fire element that might have been toxic all of a sudden turns into passion and direction. And yeah. And so, seeing that the elementals with geoengineering have targeted the planet, the bioengineering, the mind control, and social engineering have targeted our inner elementals. And then you add the food to it, the television, the psyops, all of it. That is what powers up and keeps those dark technologies alive. The minute you break free of that, literally the dark technology is just a piece of metal. It really has nothing. It literally requires you to be in that fear mode, because then you're looking to the same system for that solution. And that's the way the news runs. That's the way the dark agendas run. So.
Yeah, well, like all that mind control, as you said, coming from like human beings, coming from other type of galactic races, how they imprint all that fear and create alternate realities in a people's head just to make them break, even if those realities are not physically existing, but when now that you were saying a couple of things. So there is a wall in Egypt, in one of the ancient temples, and you have, actually it's a tablet, it's not a wall, it's a tablet, and then you have Horus on one side and Set in the other side. Both are hooking up to, like, knotting, creating a knot in what seems a column, and then like the shape of the heart. Well, I was decoding this, and bottom line, to summarize it, is the vertebral column, and it's the coccyx. So the area where they are knotting, creating that knot, is just at the level of the kidneys, in the back part, of course. And now if you see the kidneys, which retain a lot of fear and so forth, they have like pyramidal hats. I call them they're yeah, it's like they're crowns, but it's like in the shape of a pyramid. It's very cute. So if you put that on the back part, and then you put on the front, acknowledge that here at a tissue level, we have the shape of a triangle, which is where the word pyramid comes, the fire of the center here. Then you say, wow, so here we're trying to empower this. And then the other two pyramids, the back guys, have an energetic entanglement, which is perfectly capable to be unknotted, because they are showing when two forces work together, which is light and dark within, then you become unstoppable. It's like your story made me like, you reminded me of a personal one, like like, long story short, I was in a bathroom in the airport of Paris. It was 2 a.m. I had just been at the Tour Eiffel, the Eiffel Tower, and it had been pouring rain, so I was soaking wet. And there I was in the airport at 2 a.m. that has access to the outside part, and like anyone can go in. And then I was drying my clothes, and then I felt a presence. And there was again at 2 a.m. this guy that came into the bathroom, and I said, like, you don't want to look, and you're like, and then as soon as I felt him, I said, he's not human. And then I looked at it, and he was carrying a mala, with Hindu. He was a Hindu. And then, like an amazing story unfolded from the fact, like all these like huge messages that he gave to me, because, and I also even gave him money as well, what I had at that moment. And then I said, like, the moment that I stepped out of fear and trust that nothing was going to happen to me, because I was being taken care of, the very same force that took me miles away from what at that moment was my home, all the way there, I was home at that moment. When I felt that, when I generated that, allowed that safety to be within me, I was home,
That's so
and
true.
yeah, I didn't run away. Otherwise, I wouldn't have listened to all those amazing messages. But
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Wow. And just when you're talking, when you think about all the distortion and all the things that are constantly bombarding the human realm, they try and make it really, really hard to maintain that. That's why, yeah, it's just so important to, be in nature and to ground and to just
yes,
the journey of really getting to know yourself, because then you feel when you kind of slip, how to pull yourself back. Because sometimes, yeah, people can just stay in a loop and then they just take something to make that feeling go away. And that's where we really just have to, face ourselves fully and completely and understand. Because the thing is, if we have amnesia, the physical body is showing what's unconscious, and it's showing up in the form of pain or discomfort or something like going on that doesn't feel good. It can create, because as we all know, when a fear response happens, the nervous system starts to constrict. You might have sweaty palms. I mean, the physiology absolutely changes in the face of that. And yeah, to kind of walk it back into awareness and a feeling of safety is a lot. Some people spend their whole life in fight or flight. It's crazy. I've spent a good portion of my life in fight or flight. I'm like, but I learned that, telling the difference. And yeah, I mean, not like, yeah, I don't know. I
yeah.
still
No,
work on it to this day. I still have to, yeah.
I get you, but yet now it's different. And I'm not coming from, and I know that you're not as well, coming from a space of, oh, yeah, from now everything will be so perfect and open your arms to receive the new millennium, like whatever. It's like more about becoming very responsible of our power and allowing ourselves to receive and enjoy from our fruits, the blossoms of the seeds that we have planted. Because at some point we could have forgotten about what was that, or not, because we're constantly being rewarded. And I'm very grateful for that. But now I'm talking about a massive scale, like being able to trust that everything that you have done so far to create a new reality is here. The frequencies are helping us around the earth, that all the celestial bodies that are influencing the earth's field, it's working. The artifacts, the very same evolutive process of the earth. um, you know just, I always encourage people to drink a better quality of water, because the upgrades that are happening now in the molecular structure of our water regarding to plasma, it's a wave, that it can lift us, because again, we are 80% water, and it's easier to keep coherence, emotional coherence, as the water itself. Because if we are drinking polluted water, or with who knows what, our emotions would be a reflection of that as well, so yeah. I don't
Yeah.
know, I mean, I could talk to you hours. I
Oh,
also
I know. It's so fun. I'd love it.
yes, but let's I would love to have you again at some
Oh, yeah,
point.
and I'm gonna have you, and I can't wait. And,
Yes.
we'll definitely talk about that. I so appreciate you having me.
Oh,
Um,
and I
yeah,
appreciate you so
it's
much.
been,
Thank you for
yeah.
everything that you're doing. I truly honor your path. I truly honor your essence, that beautiful humbleness and love that you emit, like effortlessly trying it, like it's beautiful. And
Thank you so much.
you do so much for the collective, through not only the information that you're conveying, yet from the space that you're doing it. You're really backing that up with your actions. And again, that capability of saying, sharing your true nature, your human nature, which I think that it's very important when we share from that. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Gosh, your presence is incredible. Your wisdom, all that you embody. I really look forward to more connecting and having you on. And thank you. Thank you again. And thanks everybody for tuning in.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for your beautiful comments. Where can people reach out to you?
My website's cosmicgaia.org, and most of everything I think is on there as far as my social media and my YouTube channel.
Okay. Well, perfect. Guys, until next time. And remember to join us at the Rise of the Guardians conference in Sedona, and May, from the 8th to the 10th. And also at the Star Knowledge, the Day of Being after the Rise of the Guardians. Then we have the Star Knowledge in South Lakota in June. If you want to find out where you can get your tickets, just, you can see it on my media. It's all over there. And also, of course, the Alien event on March. And I will be presenting as well in CLE. Remember, I will be there talking about ancient alien artifacts. Stay tuned for more intel that I will be sharing. Thank you so much for joining us. Until next time.